thank you guys for coming tonight to the Catoctin Furnace, the CF Descendants working group. I'm going to get started with my PowerPoint because first, before we really start researching, it really came to mind and to my heart that I wanted to level set with you guys about what it looks like going forward when we're trying to research our ancestors that were enslaved in anything that has to do with the period of slavery. What does it mean mentally, emotionally, and psychologically on us? Because I believe it's very important for us to really start having that conversation so we understand what we're getting ourselves into. And it's not that you have not, embarked upon that, but I definitely have. But let me just have a conversation with my cousins about what this really is looking like embarking on researching our enslaved ancestors. So here we go. Okay. So the overall conversation, like I said, is let's understand what it means when you want to find slaves, when you want to find enslaved people. And now we're going to be going back to a past, to a time period we don't ever want to experience again. And so just that statement alone, I think, speaks volumes to, one, why we're feeling that we want to give honor and homage to our ancestors, but that period alone can take a psychological and mental toll upon us doing that, right? So these are just some gentle images of, what our ancestors and what the people during that period of time labored, toiled, what they were being subjected to. We understand it, we get it. But for this project, I felt it was very important. Slow down and remind ourselves of what we're embarking upon. So, what was slavery and what did it mean to be enslaved? And so, I know that there are many projects that are honoring the slaves by saying their name, right? And so we did that when we did the reunion. They made sure they had someone who could speak all of the names that were identified as slaves of the Catoctin Project. So there's one thing to speak their name, but this is about understanding what they endured, because when we really start embarking upon finding the records for these people, we have to remind ourselves of the conditions that they actually lived within. We cannot escape ourselves from that, because all of that really is going to drive some of the politics that we're going to start experiencing and when we're doing this. So we know they were not property. They were considered as property. And they were auctioned like livestock, torn from their families. It was perceived that this would be a lifelong of captivity. With that, it's just amazing, that term lifelong captivity, that they actually felt that the institution of slavery would exist forever. They were stripped of their identity and dignity, worked to death. They had no voice. They were not considered as individuals. Children were born into bondage, beaten and broken to submission, existence under constant threat. Then there were forced labor and exploitation. So some of the things we really have to pay attention to when we're starting to research, where were these slaves? Where were they living? Where were they held captives and in bondage? So, what were the conditions? So now I'll tell you, I hated history. I have to slow down and learn so much history right now, it astounds me. But that's because I didn't pay attention to them growing cotton, didn't care about whether or not they were growing sugar and tobacco plantations, and what the land was like or what the conditions were like. Because we are privileged that we today are not living in those conditions. But if we're going back in time hundreds of years, we have to remind ourselves of the conditions that these people were living within, right? And then physical violence and punishment. Absolutely, the movies have depicted that. The pictures and images that we see have depicted that. Psychological abuse, dehumanizing of themselves. I watch Roots. I have a Fire Stick, and there's a Roots 24/7. And I just let it play because sometimes I don't want to watch what's on TV. I'm focused on researching, but I let that stuff just play. And there was a conversation that the slaveholders were having about whether the slaves were smart enough to learn. And just that, watching how it's depicted in that movie is just reminding us that you are purposely trying to dehumanize these people. You are purposely comparing yourselves well above these people because, of course, they will be lifelong in servitude. Their living conditions we know were totally unsanitary, totally cramped. They did not care. All they cared about was the money. To show me the money, how we say today, it's all about the Benjamins, how we say today. That was all they cared about. And that's all they were choosing to see them as. Complete and total loss of autonomy. We spoke about that a few minutes ago. So this is about remembering the conditions that they were in, mental and emotional toll. Okay. So I need us to just take a step back and remember who we're looking for. Who were some of the America's prominent people involved in slavery? The further back I go, the further back I start seeing some prominent names that it's not that I didn't hear. George Washington had slaves. I said, hey, that was so long ago. We didn't hear Thomas Jefferson didn't have slaves. That's not my line, whatever. We've become so displaced and disconnected from who we are as a people and our history that we're conditioned to not care about this anymore, right? And so as I thought about it, I was like, I'm doing this for a reason. But the founding people who had slaves, George Washington, first president, Thomas Jefferson, third president, James Madison, fourth president, father of the Constitution, all of them declarations of independence, father of the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson, he had 600 slaves. My God, that's a lot of people. I tend to see 100s, at the most 200s. In the research I'm doing, he had 3 times that amount. James Monroe, fifth president. And on and on. I don't have to, I'm going to speak their names because when we start researching them and we start seeing their names and we want to go deeper in understanding the slaves that they owned, it's important to understand some of the barriers and the blockages that we may see. So James Monroe, Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison, John Tyler, 10th president, James Polk, 11th president, almost every president, Zachary Taylor, Andrew Johnson. All of them were presidents, people of prominence that had slaves. Now, okay, Maryland. So now we're looking at the state of Maryland. And we must understand who are the players that we're dealing with in the state of Maryland. So this is just a visual, gentle visual, 1632 to 1776. This is pre-Revolutionary War, just a map to help us level set of what was going on in the state of Maryland and who are the players in Maryland. One thing we have to start paying attention to as we research enslaved people is the property lines, because many of these individuals from the beginning had property in more than one location. And because the boundary lines just kept changing, we thinking I need to look at Virginia, when in fact in that time period it was Maryland. So we want to pay attention. I'm just now paying attention to the heavy connection that I even now have to Pennsylvania. Never would have thought it. I embarked upon this task looking for my Alabama connections. It gently was taking me to Georgia. The 1870 census, they are telling us where they believed they were born. One thing we must remember, in 1870, at that time when they were born in early 1800s per se, it might have been Virginia. It might have been Maryland, or was it something else at that time, today? So where they believe where they were born and where we are today in our research could vastly change. So we want to be cognizant of the words that they share, because that's going to drive our research location and information. Okay. So Maryland, These were some of the prominent names we start hearing and we start understanding. You know, we're hearing, right? What does it mean to me? Should I ignore the name because I don't see it in my tree? Charles Carroll. I keep hearing this. I don't even know where Carroll Town is. After today, I will figure this out on the map of Maryland as it pertains to who were the players in Maryland, what property did they own. But Charles Carroll was absolutely a prominent person during 1737, 1832. And I believe Charles Carroll is actually tied to the Frederick, Maryland area. He sold slaves to the Johnsons. So hands down, we gotta know this man's life, because who were you that you sold slaves to the Johnsons? What was your relationship to them? John Eager Howard, never heard the name until the day when I put this together. But he was on his large Baltimore estate, he had slaves. He was one of the wealthiest men in Maryland. What's the connection between Baltimore and Frederick, or Baltimore and Calvert, or Carroll? So all of these are going to be prominent names at a minimum. These are not all prominent names. Edward Lloyd, Maryland governor. One thing I'm starting to see as I'm researching these records, I'm starting to see governors, starting to see sheriffs, starting to see judges. So now we're starting to see titles of who's considered a prominent person in these local areas that owns slaves. And I'm starting to pay attention. So earlier I spoke about George Washington. And then I said, so George Washington was bestest friends with Thomas Johnson of the Catoctin. And so, of course, the brothers are going to know him. And then they did business with each other because the Johnsons were doing iron for the war, and just in general for people who wanted to purchase it, iron gates. All of these things we're starting to pay attention to that we may have taken for granted. Who actually produced this good? You know, so therefore, these relationships matter. And now as these relationships are starting to pop up, it's like, okay, am I getting pushed back because maybe they don't want us exposing every intricate detail of the slaves tied to these prominent people? I wasn't caring about the people. I'm looking for the slaves, and I didn't care who the person was, but I'm now looking at the titles of these people. And I'm like, okay, do I contact the societies that are there and tell them what we're digging into, and we want your records? Because we're not universities, we're not institutions, we're everyday people doing the work, comparable and capable to do this work. But we don't have an organization and institution behind us for this. Is it going to be respected? Will it be appreciated? And these are the things I'm saying to emotionally and psychologically we have to be prepared for. Lloyd is a name that I have in Alabama. I just noticed that today doing this presentation. But I have to pay attention to where my Lloyd ancestors came from. Okay. And then these are a few others. Harper, Robert Goodloe Harper, Senator. Roger Brooke Taney, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, owned slaves. Samuel Chase, signer of the Declaration of Independence, owned slaves. Thomas Stone and Richard Sprigg. Now, we got to realize in that time period, yes, they were slave owners, but when the Declaration of Independence came about and they were all bestest friends with George Washington, and it was something that became a political conversation. Politics drove all of this stuff. Money in politics. Colonel John Barnes, Maryland, and Lloyd of Talbot. Don't even know what Talbot is, but I need to pay attention, right? What are the names of these plantations that they owned, and what was the location of these plantations? Okay. So now when you embark upon tracing your enslaved ancestor, so you have to know the players, you have to know the time period, we understand the conditions. But I want us as a group, a body that I have the privilege of being able to work with and to speak to, understand the politics not only were back then, the politics can come into play today. And we must be prepared for, why are we doing this? What is our gain? What are we trying to get out of it? So this is just a slide to show you that in all of my lines, I'm doing due diligence to find every one of my enslaved ancestors. When we're starting to talk about slavery, you're looking at 5 generations to about 9 generations. It drives me crazy a little bit when people are like, when we're researching, you're trying to find 20 generations of ancestors. We're not going that far back, people. My 9 generation line were born about the mid 1600s to the late 1600s. We may be talking about 400 plus years, okay? But we're not going back to caveman days in this research here, in this research here. We're going back to the period of time when transatlantic slave trade brought slaves here, who owned those slaves, and what life became like after they got here. So we already know it's 400 years or so, but that's the time period that we're talking about, and depending on how far back we want to go. This is a conversation about why I use low centimorgans. I am having to justify my use of low centimorgans. And so I needed to explain to you guys why I embark upon the task when they do not want me to do it. And I had to ask myself. So the scientist says, well, when you embark upon low centimorgans, it's amazing to me how they phrased it. The phrasing to me was something that I can recall because honestly, it went in one ear and never hit my other ear. It never permeated my brain because it didn't make sense. I'm not going to lie. It was something to the effect of, hypothetically, if you have 10 people in a space and it was 400 years ago, in some weird, odd way, you will be related. All I could hear when I heard that was, I'm not related to you if there is no DNA. I can have a roundabout relationship with you because my cousin could be your cousin, but your DNA will not show up for me if that's the case. So telling me this quasi hyper strong theory, then they phrase it, which is the truth. Researching low centimorgans can be difficult, without a doubt. Tell me that. Then tell me how to do it with the low centimorgans, and then what I need to do to find my people. But don't tell me that it's a moot point. Don't tell me don't go there. Ancestry went there, then they changed their algorithm, then they stopped letting you have below 8 centimorgans, and then now we're paying $10 a month or whatever little beautiful special they offer so that we can see down to 6 centimorgans. Why now all of a sudden it matters? So I'm just sharing that because I want to level set, right? Why I go to 8 centimorgans and why I want to see every chromosome you're related to me on. And then how I use the theory of low centimorgans to make it make sense. If I did not make it make sense for me, I would not encourage you to make it make sense for you. So yes, I use multiple tools because different platforms are doing different things with the multiple tools. Filtering, I set your thresholds. When I first started, I've been doing this 35 years. I tested with Ancestry 19 years ago because they kept changing the algorithms. Even back then, I said, I'm going to let you finish catching up because this is new to you. And that's just, most of us been here this long, just started looking at records and just started looking for the records that we could find, building our tree, looking for the census, trying to understand those relationships. That's a job by itself. But then after I did the work and found my 1870 ancestors, where was I to go? So then I said, well, I need to find the slaves. What does that mean? No one's teaching us how to find our enslaved ancestors. They're giving us tools. How do you apply the tools? So cross-reference with known relatives. So what I was able to do and what the session we're going to do very soon, where you're going to use me and we're going to understand your relationship to me. And what that's going to teach you is how you do that for yourself, right? So we're going to start with our high matches and we're going to understand the chromosomes and what it means and what it embarks upon when we start looking at them in Gedmatch and looking at them in other tools like Gedmatch and DNA Painter. And we start seeing that we are related to people and we don't understand how. So then after I use my high matches, because I've seen their trees, they've told me their stories, I get their family lines, I understand their connection to me. When I start seeing someone new, because they're a lower centimorgan, DNA distributes randomly. It is not a hard distribution between you, your siblings, your parents. It's random. I can be related to someone and my brother is not, and vice versa. Does not mean we are not related. I just didn't get those segments of DNA. I just didn't get that DNA, and it's okay because he did. So for me, I'm good, right? So I triangulate with my known relatives, the relationships that I want to use with you. Because if you're matching to me and you're hitting my known cousins, and then you're starting to hit my fourth and fifth cousins, then now it's all about us figuring out how did this happen. Okay. And that's when I start tracking, and I'll show you some of the tools real quick. It's in the slide. Then I start tracking us. And then I start creating all the different tools that you're going to see me use tonight, because now I'm at that level. I want to figure out our relationships. If you don't have your 1870 ancestors documented as best you can, don't do this. You're going to frustrate yourself to death. But do the best you can, because I can show you tonight how someone has given me one 1870 ancestor, maybe an 1880 ancestor. That wasn't bad, right? Because I could take an 1880 ancestor, I can go throw them in a tree, I can go figure out and look for other trees with that person, and I can do the work to try to figure out how they're on the 1870 so that I can see how they may be related to me. Go as far as you can, but stop trying to find all these cousins. Work with what you have and what you know. And that's the foundation of this, okay? Is that you have to go as far as you can. This is just another conversation about using lower centimorgans. No more different than what I just said. Utilizing number 4 is utilizing segment analysis and chromosome mapping. It sounds so daunting. It sounds so over our heads, but I had to slow down and I prayed. Reveal this to me. It can't be this complicated. That's just how I have to approach it, because it's bigger than me, right? I'm not going to say I'm this lowly person, but scientists have figured this out. No one's out here encouraging us to do this, and no one's out here showing us how to research enslaved ancestors. Let it be me. That was just really the charge that I took. Let it start with me. And I use the cousins that you are to me to be able to figure out, can this theory really work? So this is a visual to explain to you what chromosomes are looking like when they're distributed. So on the left, we have 20 and up chromosomes. So those are those wonderful solid third cousins and higher first cousins or so. So those are going to be your higher matches. But the distribution, when I saw this on the website, and I'll show it to you tonight where it is, but when I saw the scientists that developed DNA Painter, and this is a chromosome map that he shows us. The left-hand side is our closest match, per se, or the top tiers. Second to third cousin basically is chromosome 0 to 150, or 150 chromosomes. Third cousin twice removed. But then it's still in the bottom right corner, an eighth cousin, 0 to 42 chromosomes. So you could be 20 and up chromosomes and still be an eighth cousin. This is like, what is it, statistics? You ever took a statistics class? You just did what they told you to do to get that grade, because the logic doesn't make sense for those of us who are not statistical.
You mean centimorgans, not chromosomes, right?
Thank you. Centimorgans, okay. Yes, thank you. So then the picture on the side, on the right side, is basically, I said, okay, well, 20 centimorgans, 20 chromosomes look like that. What does 11 and 66? Well, 11 still looks like this. I literally looked at 11, then I looked at 50. I started with 60, went to 50. I was like, this thing isn't changing by much. Let me go to, I think I might have done like whatever. I kept going down and down until I hit 11. And then after 11, it shifted a little. I said, wait a minute, 11 chromosomes look like this? The distribution of cousins looks like this? I didn't lose too many cousins. Okay. Then I went so far as one. I can have a one chromosome match, and that person is still three, third
You
cousin.
mean one centimorgan? I just want to
Thank you.
make sure.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you for that. I appreciate you for that. I can have one centimorgan. It's in my face, one cm. I can have a one centimorgan mat, go down to one centimorgan, and still have a third cousin twice removed. A half cousin 3 times removed. A half first cousin 3 times removed. Whatever the 3 times removed are, I think I'm learning 3 times removed, 2 times removed are the grandparent levels, is what the removals are, going up two generations or that many numbers of generations. But at one chromosome, I could still be a third cousin or an eighth cousin. Why don't I just go to one? When I saw this, he could change the science after people start paying attention to what I'm saying about this. But when I saw this, I was like, yeah, I'm good with one. What am I losing and what am I gaining? And then when I started looking at it in Gedmatch and I started comparing seven centimorgans versus 5 versus 3, and I'm looking at you guys as my cousins, did it change by much? And I'm like, no, not much. I might pick up people, but the matches I have, sometimes they change and sometimes they don't. And if they're changing, I'll tell you that's because you are related to them more than one way. And we definitely have more than one way we are related to each other. Okay. So, given the whole conversation I just had about chromosomes, if we can be related to our ancient ancestors, they love telling us about these ancient ancestors. They love showing us the DNA aligns with our ancient ancestors after Christ and before Christ. Anno Domini, I think that's how you pronounce it, and before Christ, BC. If I can be related to these people, and I wanted to show my beautiful Iron Age South African ancestor, this cousin, whatever he is to me, we know that these are artificial intelligent images. We get that. But the DNA that they're representing is still sound, it's still scientifically supposed to be real. But this gentleman basically is an Iron Age South African person. He was working in an iron era. He was doing iron work probably in the country where he was. And that said to me, if I don't see that I was related to the Catoctin people who were iron workers, I know that I had an ancestor that was. So that was profound for me because what it said to me was my ancestors just might be in these areas where these iron workers are. Why couldn't I possibly be related to the Catoctin people? Okay. And then they're showing you the chromosomes where you match. And I'm like, this is chromosome 4 and chromosome 5 in my true ancestry. I'm like, I've asked the company, can you tell me the segments? Because if they give me some segments, I can figure out who else is relating to me right there. And that becomes another tool to help us figure out our relationships to one another. If I can be related to them, why I can't be related to these people? Why? Those are thousands or many hundreds of years. This is barely 300 or so years ago. And this is not just a conversation about the Catoctin ancestors, because this is only the depiction of the people who were buried. There were people who were still alive who got sold and got traded, or who were able to live until 1870 or post 1870. This is just basically a sample or a representation that brought us together, that's helping us to work together to find our common ancestors and our commonality. If I don't find that I'm related to these two individuals, although the science says, like many of you, I'm related to the woman with the head wrap, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to find my ancestors wherever they are. Before you try to research your ancestors and your enslaved ancestors, build trees for the enslaver. I kind of lose my mind, I'm not gonna lie. When I'm in groups and people are looking for brick walls and they will show you their tree, They will show you the person. And the one thing I want to say is, did you build the tree for the enslaver? Your answers lie in those trees. But when you have not taken the time just to get to know their families, you will continue to not understand how to find your matches and how to break through that brick wall. And once I started a long time ago, my trees have been created a long time ago. And I set it and forget it. I go create it until I'm done with that line, and then now they're sitting over there waiting for me to come back. But take time to do the work. Stop looking for these hundreds of or thousands of age ancestors out here. Do this work, and it can help drive you to the connection that you're looking for over there. And then I do try me. So they were talking about tracking, right? I track my connections to you guys in the projects and the Gedmatch projects that I'm in, because I need to know. The science is saying, Gedmatch is saying, look at this common ancestor. Here's your kids. But then I want to know, what surnames am I beginning to look for? Should I be looking for? And they're going to change. But at the end of the day, it's about tracking and understanding. If you're looking for your enslaved ancestors, you got to do this part of the work as well. So why are you going to start with me? So this is that conversation I just want to share with you. Why me? There's all of us in the group. Why you want to start with me, right? And yes, I'm encouraging us to come together, but I'm encouraging you to connect with me because I have done this work. I soundly know my families. I have started to, and every day I'm steadily building the trees for the enslavers, the new enslavers that I'm locating. But this is my grandmother's grandfather, or about my third or fourth grandfather. His name is James Anderson. In 1870, he was living in Barber County, Alabama. And on this 1870 census, with his family, and Henry, who was 8 years old, is my grandmother's father. He stated he was living in D.C. And so I found this record years ago. And I'm like, dude, how did you get to Alabama from D.C.? How does that happen? So that had been a puzzle in my mind. Then I watched 12 Years a Slave. And when I saw Oliver Northrop, I think his name was Oliver, how he was taken into bondage from having been free, I had to pause that movie and just take a step back because I didn't understand the conditions at the time. So to watch a man that was free being ripped away from his freedom and enslaved, I looked at his name and I said, did this happen to you? Okay. So here he's identified as white. So on the census, I'm looking for the race, and it goes, tick marks go all the way up to white. Okay, the entire family passed for white. That's very interesting. Their name was James Anderson. They were living in house 1760 in Barber County, Alabama, Township 8, Range 25. Then I had a cousin call me out the blue. She actually is a blues jazz singer living way overseas. And she found my name online because I was researching the family, and I wrote a book, and I hadn't written the book at the time, but I have done so many things with so many things. So she found my name that I was researching the family, and she said to me, I'm looking for James Wiggum. And I said, who is this man? And so when she pointed me to the census record, James is now not Anderson, he's Wiggum. All of the same children that was in that record from before. And now he says he was born in Virginia. I was blown away, never heard the name Wiggum until she called me. And there was no DNA at the time for me. I had never seen the name Wiggum on the DNA. I would look randomly because it's there when you log in. I didn't saw anything that spoke volumes to me. I kept it moving. Over time, DNA, more people are testing. We're getting more data. And so, of course, we're starting to see new names, more names as they're calculating. But when this time period was, there was no Wiggum. And so now they're living in house 399 in, I think, Clayton. The other location was Louisville, Alabama. This is Clayton. I'm like, this is a totally different house. a totally different race because now you're Black. How did the enumerator not know this? But nonetheless, this is a conversation about me allowing what our families are telling us where they're born, the records guiding that direction. But I want you to understand why I care about Maryland and Virginia. Because I found everybody in Alabama I needed to find up to 1870. I'm now looking for Georgia. I'm looking for Virginia. I'm looking for DC. And what is that story? So as over time, as I started researching, looking for the ancestor and the enslaver, I was able to come across this will because once I figured out the Wiggum name and I started researching the Wiggums and I started seeing family with matches to the Wiggums, I can honestly tell you, I really don't remember why I looked at Hannah. I'm not gonna lie. I think someone married a Hannah and that drove me in the Hannah direction. Then I had to build a tree for the Hannahs. So I built a tree for Wiggum. And then I built a tree for Hannah. Who is this Hannah person? Let me figure out his life and his family and their story. So once I figured out all of his wives and I took them as far back as to Ireland. I think that's where the Hannahs came from. I said, okay, I'm not ready to go further. But now that I've taken the oldest Hannah to Ireland, coming to America, let me start looking for wills. Let me start looking for probates. And I took that time to do that. And then I started seeing the daughter married an Allen. The grandson who his mom married a McKigney. There's another grandson who married a Haddon, William Haddon. So he was the son of William Haddon, and the daughter, she married a Haddon. And then the granddaughter is Mary Clark. Who is your mama that married a Clark? And so now I said, wait a minute. Are there connections to me with these last names? And I started going on Ancestry searching for Haddon. And I went on Ancestry looking for Clark, looking for all of the names McKigney. I did not see a McKigney. I saw matches under every other name. And then I looked in their tree after I did this. So then I read the will. And the will clearly said, and there was so much more to this will, but it said he was bequeathing or loaning Sook with five of her children. What does that mean? There's more children of Sook. So his son got some of the slaves, and then you read further, some of the other slaves were the son of Sook or the daughter of Sook. And when I got done, that spreadsheet was amazing of how many people were referenced in this man's will. And then I needed to start tracking the children and the wives. And so this is just showing again another component of more of Sook's children or family being divided amongst Thomas Hannah's family. And then I started throwing them in a spreadsheet. So now this is a conversation about Baker Johnson's Sook. So what brought me to Catoctin is I had a cousin and he was a part of this group. PJ is his name, Tompkins, I believe. So PJ was from Barber. We were DNA matched through Gedmatch. Didn't understand how because I had not known about the Hannahs at the time. I knew about the Hannahs at the time, but he had nothing in his tree that alluded for me to look there. So I then go to the Catoctin group because I'm told you should check out Catoctin. Whatever. Okay, fine. I'll go there. I saw PJ. He's a cousin. I gotta get in because if he's a cousin, I should get in. I got in and they released that video that's on PBS. I believe it's PBS, but they released that video about the Johnson's lives. And when Baker Johnson, and when I looked at his will, and I saw Sook is at the vineyard. And Sook not only was at the vineyard, but there is a Betty on line 9 just above that. It's not highlighted. But it said Betty, who was Magdalene's daughter, or whomever, right? I'm like, wait a minute, is this my Sook? Many people feel that could be far-fetched. I received that. It was just tucked away. Something in me, because I knew that my line, my Sook, in Henry, James has ties to Maryland or Virginia. And so as I researched Sook, her oldest daughter, who was a Betty, was born in Virginia. That's because I found that she was able to live post 1870, and her record says she was born in Virginia. So now I'm tracking their births, and all roads are leading to Virginia and Maryland. So why not Catoctin? Let me see how this ride takes me. What does this mean? At that time, no, I couldn't prove a thing. It was tucked away. So I built a tree for a baker. Let me figure out who's these Johnsons, who's the players. That's when I started looking, realizing Baker Johnson, four brothers who own Catoctin, older brother Thomas Johnson, governor after the Revolutionary War. He became governor, so he got out of the business, probably for political reasons, because he aspired to do more. So he released his ownership of Catoctin, gave it to his brother. So I'm letting the timeline, I'm letting the records, and I'm letting the data tell me the story, because I'm just looking for the slaves. But I can't go looking for them without understanding their connections to their enslavers. This is more of Baker's distribution. And on the right, that one column is highlighting the family and where the slaves went. I'm paying attention to the last names, and then I'm going to go look for the daughters' husbands to see who did they marry. Never not connect the daughters to their fathers. And then look at the probate records for the fathers and make sure there is no slave distribution, or if there is, recorded. Because those wives were empowered with property and slaves, and they came to the marriage with property. Yeah, the husbands died before the wives. They could not take ownership of the wife's property. And that property went back to the wife and to the children that were previously allocated on that other husband's will or records. You must know that. This becomes an emotional and psychological, time-consuming game or project that we are embarking upon. This is not just about small, lowly DNA centimorgans telling me I'm related to you. Let me join your club. Let me join your committee or in your group. What I am trying to build is a body of people that can recognize that this is work. It can be labor intensive, but if we come together, we can do great things. And then what I am recently more telling you guys, Catoctin was not where people started. And I'm researching that right now. And that's leading us right back to the GU 272 project. And then I saw just today, putting this together for you guys, I was trying to find all the Jesuit priests that owned slaves, because that's a part of some of the research I want to present to you in the future. As we leave Catoctin and we head back to the native land of the other areas of Maryland, because Catoctin was not where they started. Then I saw Suki in 1792. And if you remember, my Henry said he was from Georgia. And I thought I saw a record of some such said Princess George, Maryland. But nonetheless. So I just tuck these little clues wherever they need to go. I don't know if this is maternal, paternal, or whatever ancestor is going to fall on. I have strong suspicions based on the DNA. But this is a conversation about allowing the DNA to tell us where to look, aligning our relationships up with one another to help us all figure out our enslaved ancestors. And so let us begin. And so I wanted to be able to do that with you guys. And I'm going to record it and I'm going to put it up on the group for the others who didn't make it, because if you're listening to me talk about low centimorgans, you have to justifiably, if you're going to listen to me speak for me, and why this justification absolutely can make sense, right? And if I can't make it make sense, then you tell me. But I'm going to show you that I made it make sense. So I'm going to start with, who was first up on deck? I think Amanda. I'm going to start with Nancy. No, I'm not going to start with Nancy. I'm going to start with Amanda. Nancy, I want to add you to the conversation with Crystal. So Crystal was going to do a talk next week, but she got called to do something different. And so next week's meeting, we'll do more of this dissecting with different people. Okay, so I have Gedmatch up, and I'm going to pull up the Catoctin project. And I'm going to first look at Amanda, and then I'm going to look at, that child is not, I'll figure out her name real quick. The other person I want to look at. And then if you put your kit in the chat, or tell me if you want me, put your name in the chat if you want me to triangulate you around me. So we're going to look at my tree. I want to look at your tree. We're going to let the DNA tell us where to look. And I'm going to see if I can figure out the possibility of the connection that I have with whoever I'm looking at. So Gedmatch is done. And so now I'm going to look for Amanda in my DNA painter. So I've done a few sessions on DNA painting. If you want me to walk you through this, it's really, for the most part, very simple. It looks daunting. But what is amazing about DNA Painter is if you stay the course and you give yourself about 2 days, it could take about 2 days. It took me 2 days, and I'm quick and fast. But give yourself a week, and you just go to Gedmatch. I'm going to show you what to do right now. Whether you chose 7 centimorgans, if that's your comfort level, I'm happy for you, personally. I just don't find a lot of people when I stop at 7, because my ancestors got taken from Maryland and from North Carolina and from South Carolina. And because the messiness that was slavery and the brutalness that was the enslavers, and either them breeding slaves for property, people visiting their cousins and family, or just passing through for the night and decided they wanted to go down Slave Row and just have a tryst. Or they left to go on a trip and took their slaves with them for comfort. We was not there. We do not know the conditions our families endured. So for us to box ourselves into the possibilities of relationships, to me, does not make any sense. When we're talking about enslavement, remember, this is about slavery, pre-1870. So I let the DNA tell me where to look, and then I go from there. So you're just going to load your Gedmatch, and you're going to download the CSV file or the Excel file. And then once, I should not have done that. Once the Excel file is open, what I try to do, me personally, is I will leave it opened on the left, because there's some information I want out of it. And then, so all you need is going to be these 4 columns, C, D, E, and F. I absolutely know I don't need my brother. I think most of you have been mapped, other than very new people. But after I map you, I go through a color on it just to help me to make sure I know where I need to leave off, because this is daunting. I need to get down all the way to the bottom of how many rows is this? Thousands, 6,000. But if you notice at the very bottom, I don't know who Gary is. I think Gary is new to me. I'm going to paint Gary. I know that I painted Mr. Wilden. I think Gary is new to me. So I'm going to paint Gary, because at 1 chromosome, I only match Gary. I'm sorry, 1 centimorgan. I only match Gary on chromosome 6, and he's an 8th cousin, almost 9th. So the most I've ever personally seen is 9 generations in this row. I am sorting this by the most common recent ancestor. So at the 9th position with Mr. Gary in my tree, if he shows me a tree, I should be able to figure out who he is. So I've kind of gone off course because I want to show you how to paint real quick. So I'm going to copy those 4 rows, those 4 columns of information. And I'm just going to tuck this in a corner on the side so I can get back to it and step back through it. So I do a side by side. I just reduce the size of the window. MY24. Okay, there he is. And Mr. Gary has not given me a tree. Please upload your tree in Gedmatch, because regardless of the projects, regardless of how people find you, we need to be able to know if we're related to you and use a tree. Mr. Gary has not given me a tree. I cannot do that. So the most I can know is when I finally ever see his tree. Now, let's say he says, hey, my tree is in Ancestry. I'll give you the link. That's beautiful. I just need to be able to see a tree. So I'm going to go to DNA Painter. I've already copied those 4, the data from those 4 columns. And I'm going to choose the option to just paint a match. I'm going to paste it because I know for a fact that I'm at one Centimorgan with Gary. So I just go to one, I leave it, and I hit save. And I wonder if he's in here. So there's Gary. And then what I'd like to do is I will add the chromosome that I match you on. That's just my thing. You don't have to do that thing. I might use DNA Painter to help me figure out my relationship to you. That is not how the originator of the software did it, but software is, you can use software almost however you like if you can make it make sense. And I'm a software tester. I like to try to make it make sense. So as a customer, this is how I'm going to use it. Because right now I don't know my relationship with you. I can't go stick you with an ancestor that I don't know. So I like to also put what the generation is that I'm supposed to be looking. And this is just notes. I love the fact he gives us notes. You can pick whatever color you would like from this box. Do not choose both. And I will literally show you why you do not want to choose both. So what happens when you choose, then you just hit save. And so we know that he's an 8th chromosome match to me. Well, where is he? And he was on, chromosome 8. I went too far down. Well, here's 8. Oh, he wasn't chromosome, he was chromosome 6. Okay, I knew it looked suspicious. When you choose both, it maps that person's color on both the paternal and the maternal. And it's confusing. It can be horribly messy when you do this right here. So what you're going to want to do is paint a tree for your maternal or your paternal. That was not what I wanted to do. Okay. So to correct it, I just need to choose his name and edit it. So he's at the top. Your new matches is at the top. And we're going to take a look and just see who he matches with me. Then I'm going to go to Amanda. My computer's trying to catch up. And now I can say maternal. He could be a paternal match. I can always change that at a later date if that's what I need to do. But I do like to look at the very unique matches like his, because this is going to tell me there isn't anywhere else I need to look. You are a hardcore match to me. Who are you and where are we going to be looking? He has some interesting people. So once you click that, you choose overlap. On chromosome 6, these are all the people he matches with me in my maternal map that I created. Matter of fact, I'll put him quickly in the Catoctin group because he's matching you guys too, right? But you're not in. I have not moved you to my maternal group, my maternal map, because I need to look at all the matches on my maternal line that I know, and I'm still trying to figure you guys out. So you can have more than one map. But I put him in my maternal because this is the core where my matches are that I know. So there definitely are some interesting matches that I see in here, but it's still going to take some work. And where I'm getting to the point of now is that I need to start looking now at these people's trees and making a note to better understand how they're related to me. Danya Williams, some of you have seen her present. Danya and I are related, and her and I have spoken. I'm related to her mom. So we know this goes back to South Carolina. You've heard me talk about Walden and Hannah. They're right there. Jerome Spears, he's in the GU 272 group. Jerome is related to me. And he has Hannah. He has Wiggle matches. And so, yeah, the conversation is he related to me through that last name? Because that's what these people in how they're congregated, how they're grouped, is speaking to me. So let me go to the Catoctin Project and let me go to Amanda. So this is how I use Gedmatch and DNA Painter to do this. You can definitely, you can create a map for free, one map for free. So that's cool because you can play, right? It gives you an opportunity to play. And it's not as over complex as it seems. With everyone that I've mapped so far, I have 41% of my chromosome mapped. And that's almost half. Almost half of who I am, I should be able to figure it out with you guys. So Amanda is in here, and as you can see, because I've written what chromosomes she's matching me on, visually I can just at a glance tell. And one thing I've done, I've used Ancestry Chromosome Painter. I've used Gedmatch's Chromosome Painter to help me to understand what is my heritage matches on my chromosome. So I know that chromosome 1 and 5, those are depending if they're Senegal, that's maternal. I don't have any Senegal paternal. It's only maternal. Okay, so let's go with Amanda. I see Rhonda's Gigi girl. So, all right. So there is Amanda's. So now I don't need the spreadsheet. And now I need Amanda's tree that she's giving me access to. I just have to find it. And she's right there. Okay. All right. So there's Amanda's map, tree, rather. And then the first place I will start, the very first thing I first of all see is Alabama, Anderson. Hands down. My first conversation with her is going to be about who's your Alabama person, girl? You see my Henry, right? Henry is my grandmother's father's name.
Oh, wow.
And Eliza, there have been some Elizas. They were in Alabama. This is about 1894. Yeah, baby, I have a suspicion I know where you're hitting me at a minimum, right there. So I'm going to go now to Gedmatch and look for Amanda in the Catoctin project and see what what Catoctin is saying, what Gedmatch is saying. Yep, Gedmatch is saying you should be matching me at 6 generations. Now, one tidbit I tell you guys, I have not proven this theory. I'm still trying to vet this, but DNA Painter clearly vets it for me, right? But when I look at Gedmatch and I start seeing my matches, and it doesn't begin with 1, 2, or 3, my match to her starts with 4, 5, 8, and then it gets to the bottom and it starts all over again with 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have repeatedly started staring at this like, why did this repeat? What does this mean?
Is that a different ancestor?
Is it a different ancestor? And in my heart of hearts, I believe it is, because if you understand, when you know how you sort something, you sort by last name, then you're going to sort by first name. It's going to group what you've told it to do. We've told it to sort my matches by the most recent common ancestor. What it does not do is tell me if there's more than one person where that position really is. And I can't say that they want to change the software's algorithm. I know we just have to do the work. I'm just happy they let me go to one right now, chromosomes. That's why I download them real fast in case people want to start acting funny. I've already done the work. You can do whatever you want to right now. I've done all the work. I got all the chromosomes I need. Now I can look for my people. But what this suggests is that she is at 6 generations matched to Amanda in the Catoctin. Hands down, this is 5. Jesus, this is 6. Now, it is a name, and I get that. But she's barking up my tree hard, which is a beautiful thing. So my conversation to her would start, who's your people in Alabama? Time. All right. So for Amanda, if you're looking at my tree, and I start with what I can tell, because of course there's going to be names I don't know. But here's James, that same James that I told you was born in DC. And then James's mother is Lucretia. No, I'm sorry, Anderson. I'm believing you're at this line, but maybe not. You could be at this James Anderson line. Interesting. So I would have to figure out, Amanda, where's our connection to? That surprised me. The reason I say that is this Henry Anderson right here had a lot of kids. Um, and I know that he had a son named Henry that I have not ever been able to track. He also had a son, I was told through oral history, named Felix that moved to Atlanta. I keep looking for Uncle Felix. But DNA don't lie. It verifies in my own words. So I got to figure out this sixth generation connection to Amanda. And I can't force her to be at four generations when that's not where it is. Very interesting, girl. Okay, so then I can look at the others and figure out. So she got some Georgia. So I then, knowing she's six generations, I'm going to go look in Ancestry to see, do I have matches to Stevens or Sims? I think Sims is a very strong suspicion. And Ellis. So now I'm going to go back to DNA Painter. You got some South Carolina, you got some suspicion, but now I need to see who you lined up with, who you match with me. That's the money. I need to stop guessing, right? I need to see who you're matching with me in this cluster. Now you're not so this is one cluster. You do not Alton Obi. I believe that's Rhonda's line. Sharice is in the Catoctin project. Alton is Rhonda's cousin, but I don't see Rhonda. So this is a match to Amanda between the cluster of us that we need to figure out. And so what I'm really right now trying to figure out is she related to me on my Hannah Wiggum line? Because that's the line that I had to fly out and had more information. Mm-hmm. She has some ties that look like they're going back to this queen name that so the Nigerian connection is this almost rare. This is Iowa was going to talk to us tonight about Nigeria. So Amanda, you and I and Iowa's ancestor, along with the other people in this cluster, we have ties to Nigeria. And she can speak strongly to that because she says those lines are only Nigerian.
That's interesting because that's where majority of my DNA is pulling from, Nigeria.
So that's why, so when she's well, I definitely want to have a conversation with her about what she knows with Nigeria, because if her family was strongly in Nigeria, and she did put a post, and I don't know if it's a personal page, but she was really asking people to just be patient with her. So I wouldn't just necessarily nilly-willy, hey, Deborah did a presentation, can we talk? You know what I mean? So just respectfully, let us give her some time to just get well. And but it's definitely a conversation I want her to have with us. Okay. Yes. So as I go down, M Queen is a name of Alicia Queen. I wonder if these two are related, but I'm not strong with this connection right here because I don't have a lot of my Alabama people in Catoctin. Amber Lynn, she's recently been blowing us up with all her breadth of information she's been researching. Well, you are related to Amber Lynn along with me on chromosome 3 right here in this cluster. And if I put the two of you in my maternal line, I can better vet and see how that's lining up. So at the moment, push come to shove, this is why we have to do what we got to do. So I'm going to go to my spreadsheet real quick, and I'm going to add you to my maternal. Let me go to my maternal and see if I already added you. Because if I start talking to people, like a couple of conversations, I might throw you in my group anyway. So let me see if you're already over there, because that's going to point me in a stronger direction of how you're lining up with my known matches. Okay. And I do need to put the rest of you in my maternal now that, I created the Catoctin project because this is who we are, but I knew you can't stay there because you're not in my paternal map. You're not in my maternal map. But this was I already knew you were related to me, but I really did this one for this project, for the group. So if I go to my maternal and I search for, I believe Rhonda may be here. But this is helping. What I'm hoping you're getting out of this is how I step through figuring out my relationships with you guys. before we go look for ancestors, this is one thing that we could do easily in talking with one another. Yeah, girl, I told you, I know me, and you and him, too many you and him, I got to get rid of one. But you are there, you're in my maternal side. So thankfully I didn't have to add it. And those are all the chromosomes you have, which we probably already saw. But now let me see how you're lining up with my maternal side.
Okay.
Nikisha is a Wiggum, that I know. David Patterson, Jerome comes back to Wiggum. David Patterson, Whedon is also his line. Dante, I gotta ask him, is he finally a Hannah or a Wiggum? So this could potentially be a strong conversation about it, but I'm still vetting because I have too many other names I need to be certain of. Jolene Richmond is I'm related to her mother's side and her father's side. Her mother's side is Alabama. Her father's side is Jamaica because my father's side is Jamaica. So it's about knowing the people that you're clustering and you're talking with. Lanika Swope. Oh, I know how she's kin to me, but what I'm really looking for, are you kin to me through Wiggum and Hannah? Bird. So Amanda, do me a favor. This is the other thing that I do with people when I use. I know for a fact you're a Hannah, and I know for a fact you're Anderson now. This is one thing I need you to do that I ask people to do. So pull up, you have Ancestry, go to your matches.
Okay.
Because I know the names in this cluster, the first name I want you to search for is BYRD, Bird. You're definitely a Hannah and a Wiggum, without a doubt.
Ooh, that name, that name. I think I saw one on my mother's side by that name. Hold on a second. Let me see.
So this bird is a junior and a senior. And in my tree, while she's doing that, I'll show you in my tree, this is basically a whole different connection to me. So the birds are coming out of, all of this is my maternal line. All right, Morgan, where are you? You're not that far over. Sorry, you guys can't see that. Bird is a cope. There he is. Morgan Bird, right there. So Morgan Bird was taken from Georgia to Alabama, but my bird line takes me all the way back to Virginia, Carroll County, Virginia, if you saw that. And then I've been able and fortunate to have cousins who have had amazing trees. So as you can see, I'm heavily going all the way back to St. Anne's Parish in Virginia. I think that was the white enslaver. These are all vetted via DNA. I have clustered myself around a bunch of my cousins over here. Jerusha, a bunch of my other cousins I have DNA. I do have a high match under Fortune, and that was able to help me solidify all my other Fortune matches or my other bird matches. So this is how I've been able to find my other ancestors using these tools and DNA and clustering around my matches. You definitely most likely have a connection to bird. We got to
I
look.
do. I do. I see it on maternal and paternal side.
Okay. So the other name I want you to take a look at is search for the name Hannah, Hannah. And then what time is it? Okay. I'm going to give you about
Now,
3. I'm sorry. Yes.
you.
Did someone say something?
It was me,
Oh,
Amanda.
okay. Yes. You have Hannah's?
Yes, ma'am.
Try Wiggum. Whigham.
No.
Okay. So that means you're going to cluster. Well, it doesn't mean you're not matching. It just means you have higher DNA that came to you through Hannah. But then as I figure out that connection, okay. So we know you have Bird. We know you have Hannah. Trying to see if there's another name that's standing out to me through my known. Norris, try the name Hooten, Hooten.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
um, this Eric Palm, this Norris Douglas, we are related to the Houghton name. That's a whole nother one of my ancestors over here in my tree. Okay, who's my Houghton Wooten? I think it goes all the way down here to, no, Houghton Wooten is Fitzpatrick. Right there. Houghton Wooten. This is my Wooten line. And Wootens take me to, I think this is one of my lines that might take me to Obama's great ancestor somewhere in there, or Bunch. Bunch is another name that takes me to Obama. So I'm going to stop with Amanda. You and I could connect, Amanda. I'm going to look at your tree, and that's
Okay.
why I asked you to give me your DNA, so I
Mhm.
can look at your DNA, look at your tree, study my tree, and figure out where those connections to these three lines are going to come from. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, awesome. All right, next I want to do,
I have a question.
yes,
So when you were going through Amanda, she had birds, and then she had Hannah's, and then she didn't have the Wiggums,
yes,
and then she had the Wooten or Harvard.
yep.
So does that line stem through the birds? Through the Wooten?
No, these are totally separate lines. Totally separate lines. So to show you what was going on, this is the Wooten here.
Mm-hmm.
This line connects to all of these other names, but my Melissa Wood married a Fitzpatrick, and as I studied the records and the enslavers' names, that was how I was able to figure out where my Wooten and Houghton came into play. Because basically, and I'll show you this, my Amanda, so this is in Alabama, right? She came from Georgia, but I have done I've done a YouTube video on this name, Wooten Houghton. It is on my channel. All of these are her children. She literally was a breeder. And when I had, so, and basically what happened for her was I was looking for, my connection to her is through Alexander Wood. Alexander Wood married a Melissa Stratford. They had a daughter in Alabama who married a Fitzpatrick. That Fitzpatrick is my mother's father's side. So as you can see, I have records for days on my people. And then because I showed you I do the trees, I already have done the enslaver trees to figure out who were their slaves and where were those connections.
Okay, so here's my question.
Yes.
So you instead of looking at the birds, you went to the Wootens.
No,
Right.
no. What happened was, yes and no. What happened was I looked at DNA Painter,
Mm-hmm.
and because I was looking for known names that I knew were related to me, that I have spoken with, we have DNA matches, whether they're high, and then I have some clustered with Gedmatch. Because I've had these conversations, just like I've had with you, I'm able to say, I know how you match me. You're matching me on this particular line, like a lot of other people do. But the difference is, instead of me trying to guess, I'm using DNA Painter to line us up, and I look for the common names that stand out to me for the known matches that I have.
Hmm.
And based on those strong known matches that I know I have, like I'm gonna do swoop. And what happens is I may not have spoken with my cousins in a while, but because I already have them tracked, I'm gonna. So what I want to do real quick is, Amanda, I want you to look for this next name. I'm gonna look for swoop. I don't remember who she is. Her surname that we're researching together. But because I have her in the spreadsheet, you guys don't really need to see the names. But I'm gonna look for, her name is Lanika. SWOP. SWOO. Lanika Swoop. Oh, come on. I know for a fact. Oh, hold on. I know what I did. So basically what I did is I put all these names at the top are the names that I have that are my possible connections. So Lanika is connecting to me through Leslie and Humphreys. So that's that name Humphreys. And if we went back to the tree, remember I said to you about Lanika? Lanika is a match to me through the name Humphreys or whatever I said over there, Humphreys, and there's more than one possible surname. Leslie is Hooten. I'll tell you that now. The Leslie name is Hooten, so I already knew that possible connection. Humphrey is one name. And Humphrey is one of my ancestors way over here. I just have to figure out which fly out takes me to Humphreys. So because I've talked with them, I have access to their tree. I know how I'm related to them. That's how I was able to tell Amanda, look for this name. Look for this name.
So here's my question, because I got to stay with what you taught me with the birds when you went through that process, and it's just
Okay.
for my understanding, okay?
Okay.
So when she looked, because I put in the same names,
Mhm.
and got a population of birds that were in there as well.
Yes.
So just the fact that DNA matches came up with the surname in there, and then would you not dig a little deeper to see who their birds are?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Absolutely. What DNA Painter is directing the conversation to the solidified match. We just got to figure out where the connection is.
Okay, and so with the way you have utilized DNA Painter, which directed you into a line that you knew
Yes.
very well. Okay.
So let me show you an example of how I track my my DNA matches. So for every line in every tree that I have in the note sections, I put my cousins that are matches to me, DNA matches. And that's not even a good one because I will put the Gedmatch numbers, possible prospects that I've messaged them saying, can you please go in Gedmatch? Can you share your Gedmatch? And I'm waiting for a response.
Okay.
Like right here, I need the Gedmatch, but they already have these ancestors in their tree. And I know they're matching me because I already have defined DNA matches. With high matches. Don't get me wrong. I'm talking about high matches. These are possibilities, but what this does, and I'm not going to lie, when I know you are triangulating a match to me from a known match, I then go and I will add you to my tree on that line. So that's where I give an icon. I let it be blank if I don't know. I add an icon that signifies you're related to someone through this person.
Gotcha.
And I drill all the way down and I add everybody in their tree until I get to them. I make sure I can find whatever records I can. I may not have any more notes, but I will drill this person until I find them until I get to them in the tree. And then once I get down to the very last person, there's got to be, I'm probably stuck because oh, there it is. I didn't have a visual. So there it is, DNA connection to Alante Fauntleroy. I need to know who his parents are so I don't guess anymore. So once he finally tells me his parents, I can add his parents, I can add him, and then he's done. So if someone is matching another cousin, I've added them to the tree. So I at least understand those relationships. I have the notes, I have my visual indicators, I have not vetted any of the other people. So once I find a match, I can add them to my tree. But this is how I triangulate. And, oh my God. Oh, that was the same. I think this was the same thing where I think I did the other day. I saw Frederick, thought it said Maryland, it was Virginia. But and that's Fredericksburg anyway. So this is about how I'm able to help you to see, because I did the work, I can advance slightly swiftly in building my tree and building my connections because I did the work. Now, I'll show you an example of, I would say some shaky trees. Let me see. Sook. I'll go to Sook, my Sook. So in Sook's tree, These are all of her children. There was a slave that was listed. It looked like a Lipio. I couldn't tell if it was Lipio or a Scipio, but I recorded them. The other thing you see the identifiers in front of their name. This is basically just me giving them an identifier. It's just like a tree, right? A is the highest person to date. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is their children. So my identifiers are letter, number, letter, just like the haplog groups. I didn't realize I was using that 30 years ago when I had to come up with this because my granddaddy had 26 kids. How do you track 26 kids back in the day when computers didn't exist? So I had to come up with something, and that's what I did. So I have always used this identifier pattern to figure out my ancestors. So Sook had a son named Scipio. Okay, there's Scipio. I didn't know what to do with Scipio. He just sat there. I didn't see him on the 1870 census. I couldn't help bridge him. But basically what happened was I did find Kayshawn, this person right here. So I believe Kayshawn, yes, Kayshawn is a high match to me in ancestry. So if I look at Kayshawn, as you can see, he's a high match to me. What does it mean? When I looked at Kayshawn's tree, I said, I can't do anything with that. Not one name stands out to me. So this was Kayshawn's tree. And when I expanded all of the names, looking for a common ancestor, a surname that mattered to me, you know, he did his best. He gave me something I could work with, right? Okay. So I came here. I was like, wait a minute. I saw Scipio Wiggs. That was all I saw. And I reached out to him. I said, Kayshawn, I know how you related to me. And the reason why, when I looked at Scipio, he was born in Georgia, but they didn't have any more details on Scipio. That is an awfully unique name. And when I did a demo on the Wiggums and the Hannahs, there's a video on that. He said maybe he changed his name. Maybe he was running from something. Maybe he just wanted to be different, to separate himself. And so now he can say that maybe that's why Scipio changed his name to Wiggs, but we are related. And now he's able to add the additional names to his tree. Because of DNA, because I did the records research. And then now I could go look at my matches, and I probably did just like what I did with Amanda. I search for a name, I see what the matches are, I'm gonna look in these trees, and then I'm gonna reach out to them. But I'm using sound data to help me figure out the conversation. And you can't do that. I never would have thought of Wiggs. I never, they were actually living in not just Louisville, Georgia. That's a different location in Georgia, but they were living in I've forgotten, Jefferson, Georgia. And before Jefferson, it was Burke. So I'm just showing you that do the best you can. We're not looking for perfect trees. Do the best you can to get us to 1870. If you can at least 1880, if you can do that, that gives us something to work with. Like there's no date here, but I can see the names. So if I happen to see the last name and you have no dates, I can vet that a little more on my own to see, do I have that in my tree? So this is the reason why I wanted you guys to triangulate yourselves around me, because I do have the data, the records. I know the relationships through the DNA. I know the other possible relationships that I'm looking for. And the only other thing that I'm doing is I'm using the tools to direct my conversations to you. And that's the only thing different that I'm doing. So I'll ask if you guys have questions, because I know the fact I need to do this with more of you now. My next sessions, I'm not going to talk no more about Lawson and Morgans. I'm not going to talk anymore about the trauma that we're facing emotionally and psychologically doing this work. But my ask is to you is stop looking for people that are, that are just so many hundreds of years ago if you haven't done the foundational work. One other thing I am going to do with this group, and I should have gotten that document ready, but I didn't. I was writing the PowerPoint literally 3 minutes to 7. Is I am going to put a post in the groups and say, tell me your story. How do you believe you're related to Catoctin? What's brought you to this project? It's a gentle conversation. I want you to be able to write and to share, and it'll be a living document that I'm asking those in this group, in the Catoctin group, to just tell us your story. Number one, you tell me your story, I read your story. Now I have that in my head when I'm researching. And now I can pay attention to what I'm looking for and how these dots can get connected. Two major things I want to say before I end this conversation. Number one is we got to remember, as I said earlier, they never, ever, ever, ever thought we would read. That was not an anticipation they thought we would ever do. So that's why they could record whatever they wanted to record in these books. Legally, they figured out a system to make sure they accounted for taxes and records and all of that stuff. That's why they felt the need to burn it down. The beauty thing about you burn it down in one company and one county, well, there still was probably a record in another county. So don't forget that if I purchase something in Virginia, there's probably a recording of me in Virginia and Georgia or Alabama, wherever it was that they went. There's most likely 2 recordings, because I have seen the recordings in Alabama for like a South Carolina. I'm like, why is this over here? Because those lawyers traveled and they went to different places and they had to maintain the property when it was bequeathed to a family member somewhere else. So they had to continually keep those records going. So there's so many different variable ways for us to get to the data we're looking for. What was my other point? My goodness. Other than the fact they never, ever, ever thought we would read, they didn't. And as I remember that in that trauma piece, the other part of it is literally the work that is needed to do enslavement research is not the same as if I'm looking for my 3rd, 4th, 5th cousins. It's not. And so it's going to take another level of digging, another level of adding tools. What I pray you're going to get out of what I share is the soundness in the methodology and how I approach the research. And when you start using this for yourself, that you're going to be able to gain these same tools to advance your own research. And that we'll be able to stand together in what we're doing. So any questions? I'll just ask if you guys have any questions, feedback, comments. I'm going to always ask for all of those. I got 8 folks on this call. Ain't nobody got nothing to say.
You know me. Awesome presentation as usual.
I asked questions.
You did. So to piggyback on that, did it help you?
Yeah, it did. It made more sense, and just kind of really, yes. But I've got to practice it, and
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should have saw me when I first started. My face was probably like this. I was stressed out because I didn't know what I was doing. I made this up for myself. No one uses Lawson and Morgan's to put them in DNA Painter. They're going to be mapping these high cousins or these high relatives, and they're going to give everybody the same one color. I'm like, how does that tell you how you're related to those people if you don't even know the ancestor that you're looking for? That didn't make sense to me. So I said, let me show you what I do. No one does it like this, but in time they will, because I just literally showed you. And I'm so happy I was able to do that. I'm happy I was able to, for Amanda, show more than one connection. And Amanda, so these are lines I know that I vetted, so I can at least be able to help you to potentially come to where I am. And that'll be amazing. And so now she'll be able to have this account of her story. But again, all this means is if all of us are related, them enslavers was having a party and having a ball. That's not our fault. I'm not necessarily trying to shed a light on what they did, but I need to use you to find my people.
And one thing, part of that, of what the history of what you were sharing, one of the other parts is that very many people were, because of the split of family, women were taking children and raising them as their own that were not even
Oh,
their blood.
absolutely.
And that was across the board. I mean, it was just
Had to survival. It was survival. I just purposely rewatched the biography of Miss Jane Pittman.
mm,
It's not a torture. I just remind myself of the period and the time. And literally, we got to remember, um, Jane raised the little boy because Big Laura was killed.
mm,
And she took him as her own until he ended up getting killed because he was trying to educate the black folks, the black families in the community. After he got an education, he came back. But she never had any kids. And it's not a true story, but it just reminds you of they are using the history to tell our story. We are privy today to be able to have records, DNA, and all these tools. I love the fact I waited till this year to play around with DNA because I'm blazing them once I finally came up to speed with it. And they finally figured, maybe I needed to let Mr. Johnny do his DNA painter and develop it, that kind of thing. I need to let time go by. But now I'm hitting them in the head with all the tools. And I love it how it's helping me find my people. One other thing, so you see my background, my grandmother's on the bottom, her ancestors on the top. They were out of Orangeburg, South Carolina. And I'm like, so the picture I found was in someone's tree I'm DNA related to in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I know I had ties to South Carolina. How? Don't know. I just tucked it in my hat. I just set it on the shelf. And literally just last week, I found her name is Lucretia Wanamaker. I found the Wanamaker enslaver in Pike County, Alabama. And I was blown away because I never, ever, ever had seen that name. But basically, the Wanamakers came from South Carolina, came to Georgia. The husband died, gave the slaves to the wife. She remarried under the name Rogers. They then went to Pike County, Alabama. Her daughter married a farrier, and I've already researched the farriers.
mm.
Didn't realize that they would have that close of a connection to me. So now I have to go back, and because I've created the tree for the Wanamakers, all the way back to Ireland, bringing them down here to Alabama. And now I can go back and study, looking for the records and figuring out where's my ancestor in this trail of madness. And so that is my methodology and how I do what I do. When I know that I have a slaver I need to research, I stop and I build a tree on them. And I find every child known to man because those women are pivotal. They are pivotal to why we're related to so many people and we're disconnected and don't realize it. So, all right, gang, it's 8:45. I appreciate you. I'm going to pick out, prayerfully, we can do our Nigeria next week, but I'll do a few other people just like this. And hopefully, I want to hear some breakthroughs next week because I've been doing these sessions now a couple of times. I want to hear a couple of breakthroughs using these tools who you've been able to find.
Could I
Go ahead.
just we could do one of these working where maybe we could actually collectively do it in real time, where if you give us that name and we search for it and then we compare.
I hate I didn't tell you guys to search because you said you looked when I said, because trust me, I hear a name, I go looking anyway too, right? That is what I do. Going forward, if I ever do any of these sessions, please pull up your computer. Because I said that, go to Ancestry, and if I say a name, look and see if you have the name. Because this is why these commonalities are going to come. The thing is, though, I may be related to you through Bird one way, Amanda another way, which is how come I didn't see me, you, and Amanda together for the Bird connection, possibly, right? But now I know to pay attention to that. One of the things that I have to do is now I'm going to be putting the last name as the theory of everyone that's in my DNA painter. I need to put their last names so that the last names now start standing out for me. Like if I would have had Bird and I would have had Hooten, then I would have been like, yeah, okay, I know how you kid. And so it would have been easier for me to quickly find that connection instead of go over to this spreadsheet or go over to here.
Okay.
So those are some of the tips that we can do to make it easier for us. Instead of adding the chromosome, add a surname because you've talked to them, how you think you're related. But please, 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 Shell, every week encourage people to get these trees in these projects so that we literally can break through these walls even if they don't come to the meetings. So, all right, gang. No other questions? As they say in church, are all hearts clear? Are all heads and hearts clear?
Yeah.
My pastor say that, I be wanting to be like, no, I got something to say. But all right, gang. Thank you so much, cousins. Until next week, or I find something new, or you find something new. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye. BioTea.com. Our concentrate teas are special blends with a variety of herbs and spices that you just add to water. Once you mix and stir, you can enjoy them hot or cold. Find out how we make water better. BioTea.com. Drink your way to better health.